All right, everybody. So without further ado, my name is Ryan Fragapane. I'm a product director here at AASHTOWare. I just want to welcome everyone to the webinar today with the Texas Department of Transportation. I'm really excited for what they're going to go over there, but I think it's some really great stuff. So I'm glad all of you could make it this morning or afternoon, depending on where you're located in the country. So welcome to everybody. I want to go over a few housekeeping items, and I'm going to hand it over to the Numetric and TxDOT teams. So just real quickly, this webinar is being recorded. So if you can't stay for the whole thing or someone in your office might be interested, within the next day or two, we'll have that recording posted to our website and linked to the YouTube channel. So I'll make sure everyone who registered for the webinar, even if they didn't attend, will receive a follow-up email with a link to that recording. So that'll be available to everybody. Since we are recording it, we are going to keep everybody muted. So everybody right now is completely muted. So that way we have a very clear audio for the recording. However, if you do have a question, we still want this to be very active. So on the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A section. Feel free throughout the presentation to go ahead and any questions that come to mind, to put them in there. We'll try to answer them as we go, but some questions may be answered further down in the presentation. So we might hold, but we promise that we will answer every question we receive. And if we do run short on time and can't get to all the questions, please make sure you don't ask the question anonymously. If you ask the question with your name, then we can follow up with you after, provide more information, or make sure that question gets answered. So please don't select the anonymous tab because that makes it a little bit harder for us to follow up if we run out of time or run a little short. So with that being said, Greg, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Welcome everyone to our first webinar of 2025. Excited to be here with you all today. And I know I say this every time, but I'm really excited about our webinar today. We've got several representatives here from the Texas Department of Transportation who are going to be sharing a little bit with us today. Before we get into that too much, though, I did want to just plug our upcoming User Experience Committee meeting. So our last meeting was last September in Kalispell, Montana. Huge success. We had a lot of users and representatives from different states show up and visit with us, share best practices. It's my favorite meeting of the year. We do have a location and time announced for the 2025 presentation. And I just realized that I put the wrong year at the bottom, but it's still February technically, so I'm allowed to do that. We did find out, or we had the location announced as Annapolis, Maryland. So come on out and join us. We'd love to have people come and sit in. Again, that's the 2025 User Experience Committee meeting, September 23rd through 24th in Annapolis, Maryland. There's going to be more registration information available, and you can sign up for that as it becomes available. But like I said, my favorite meeting of the year. It's great to come out and see the best practices that everyone's kind of adopting across the U.S. Speaking of best practices, I am really excited for our webinar today. I had the opportunity to be in Texas end of last year. I was out there for a conference Jim invited us to, and I saw the presentation that Jim and his team put together. And in the middle of the presentation, I was taking pictures, I was taking notes, and I leaned over to Audra, my coworker, and I said, Audra, I wish that every one of our states could be in this session right now. And so we made that possible. So we essentially asked Jim and everyone else who was presenting, Orlando, Peter, Monique, we asked them to if they'd be willing to come and do essentially their presentation for everyone in the AASHTOWare webinar. So really excited to see today how Texas is building district safety plans and approaching safety at the district level using AASHTOWare Safety. So let's take a look at our agenda today. We're going to run through some quick introductions. I'll introduce all of our presenters. We've got three specific topics that we're going to be getting presentations on. We're going to hear about building out district safety plans, specifically for the San Antonio district. We're going to look at some really cool young driver outreach that took place in the Austin district. And then Jim is going to wrap up by talking a little bit about kind of the future of like moving forward and how they're going to continue to advance and adopt these kind of district safety initiatives using AASHTOWare Safety. So now, as Ryan mentioned, we'll have some time booked out at the end for a Q&A. I would encourage you to drop your questions in that Q&A window as they come up as we're going through the webinar. Easier for you. You've got your question. You remembered it. You can drop it in the chat window. We'll likely sit on most of those and wait to ask them during that Q&A section at the end. But sometimes questions come up that are really relevant to what's actually being talked about like right then. So if we see those, we may cherry pick those and just kind of ask them in the middle of the presentation. So I'd invite you to drop in and just keep those questions coming throughout the whole presentation. So we are really lucky today to have 4 representatives from the Texas Department of Transportation. Do quick high-level introductions. We're first going to hear from Orlando Gallegos. Orlando is the San Antonio District Traffic Engineer, and he's going to be talking to us a little bit about putting the district safety plan together for the San Antonio District. After that, we've got Monique Campa and Peter Wimmer, who are the Austin District Traffic Safety Specialists. And they're going to talk to us a little bit about some of the safety initiatives that they're doing in Austin, specifically a really cool initiative they did around young driver outreach. And then last but not least, we've got Jim Markham. Jim's the Director of Crash Data and Analysis in the Traffic Safety Division for the Texas Department of Transportation. There's a chance that I screwed up your title, Jim. I apologize. So close enough. But yeah, that's who we're going to be hearing from today. We are actually going to start with Orlando. So I will turn off my screen share and we will go ahead and kick it over to you, Orlando. And you can run us through what you've got. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. I'm just going to walk you through some of the work that we did as part of our safety plan. As previously mentioned, it's to put things into perspective, TxDOT has 25 different districts, and each district is responsible for the creation of a safety plan for that particular region. We in the San Antonio district covered 12 counties, so this is work that will service 12 counties here in the state of Texas. Like the safety plan and everything that we do here out of the office is part of the End the Streak campaign. So here in Texas, we want to end the streak of daily deaths in Texas roadways, which have been happening for over 25 years. And we want to make sure that we end that streak. It's been a long time since we had a deathless day on the Texas roadway. A lot of people, not sure, really familiar with the audience, but I often speak to people that weren't even born when this streak started. So just keep that in mind. So the AASHTOWare safety tool became available to us shortly before our 2024 safety plan was due. So we have been working on safety plans for several years already, and we generally use whatever resources or tools are available to us. But last year was the first year that we had a chance to use the AASHTOWare safety tool. And these are really the key things on why we went ahead and dove right in and started utilizing it for the creation of our report. Just to put things in perspective, our safety plan was over 300 pages, and I'm only going to be showing you a few snips of that, but everything that you'll see today came directly from our report. So right away, we noticed that it was very user-friendly, which was critical because we had a lot of staff turnover. I'm not sure if everybody is facing that, but I'm assuming so. So before we required a lengthy I guess training period for staff to be able to perform or give some of the outputs that we wanted in a safety plan. But with this tool, it was we had a very short training time, and we were able to get rolling on it. Also, it had really good usable and valuable filters. What I mean by that is you can quickly filter things that we actually wanted to show in the plan, and we didn't have to go and get creative with that. It was very user-friendly again. And it's a really quick map builder, and you'll see some of the maps that we included in our plan. Super time efficient. The previous way that we worked on this plan took us a lot of time to create whatever outputs we wanted to show, but through this software we found very efficient ways to picture certain aspects of the data. So one of the things that I wanted to show you is in this image, you can see, how we wanted to picture the road and lanes departure heat map versus the intersections related crashes. We went ahead with the heat map, but with the other one, we wanted to show the dots as the intersections are more isolated. Like again, paints a different picture. Another tool that we utilize, again, this directly from our reports, is the chart builder. So we went ahead with a chart and utilized this chart builder to show our SSHP emphasis area. That way, we know what are the problems that we have here in the San Antonio region, so that we can emphasize in mitigation for those contributing factors. We are not tied to that. Even though that's a great tool, we also get the freedom of creating or extracting the data and then create our own charts. So that's what we did for the pedestrian and bicyclist crashes. We went ahead and pulled the data, and then we created our own chart to show that representation over the years for our safety plan. And then here's where things start getting critical. So one of the objectives of the plan is to show the data, but then also have actionable items based on those findings. And a lot of times there is a gap between those two, and we could clearly see it with this one. So in this image, we showed that our pedestrian crash density and our pedestrian projects. So as you can see, we were clearly focusing at the wrong locations, and AASHTOWare Safety helped us visualize that very clearly. So if you see the crash density, the pedestrian crash density, it's not where we have our projects. So we definitely took some action items from that and ensured that that's not going to happen to us in the 2025 safety plan. Another critical aspect of it was the Metropolitan Planning Organization boundary. So in the left, you see how we used to show the MPO boundary. It was a map that we created just to show some of the counties that were a part of it and which ones were not. But in my opinion, it does not do it justice to the picture that we're trying to paint in our safety plan, since like I mentioned, we are covering 12 counties. So in the right, you see this is an image directly from AASHTOWare Safety, and you can see how we can filter out the crashes within the MPO. And the reason why this is critical is because our safety plan, it's targeting everything, not just safety funds or that the Department of Transportation has, but it taps into any funding that is available. And as y'all might know, the funding that we have available inside the MPO is completely different than the one that we have outside of the MPO. And so having something like this is critical for our safety plan. Another thing that I thought was very valuable was how easy we could identify top crash corridors. The image that you see on the left is directly from AASHTOWare Safety. I apply some filters, and it gave me exactly what I was looking for, and it gives me crashes and the percent that those crashes contribute to the overall crashes in the district. And then, but you're not tied to that. So what we did on the right is we pulled out some of the data, and then we created our own tables to show the highway control section, essentially like a roadway ID. We created the crash rates, crash counts, and the section length. Like I said, just it's very customizable, and you can show exactly what it is that you're trying to show. On this one, same thing. So we wanted to focus on work zones, KAs, crash corridors. So we went ahead and did that, applied some filters. We were able to get our list, as you see on the left. And then once again, we extracted some of the other information to create the table that you see on the lower right. Some of the things that we are doing as we work on the 2025 safety plan is we're taking a deeper dive into the data and make sure that we are really getting the most use out of the tool. One of the things or the way I see this is it's a tool that gives you a lot of things, but sometimes we are limited to our own knowledge. So I'm really trying to dive in and understand all its capabilities. That way, I could further expand our safety plan. With that, we have two other new tools. We have the network screenings and with the segments and the intersections, which we are planning to incorporate in our plan. And then I'm also trying to generate more complex outputs that better fit the local preference. And what I mean by that is, like I mentioned at the very beginning, we have 25 districts, and every district wants to show something in particular that is tied to that region. So I'm generating my own way of showing certain things. And I have an example of what that looks like for me here in San Antonio. So in one of the previous slides, we had identified Highway 16 as a high crash corridor. So when I filter out the corridor, I was able to identify that Bandera, Atascosa, and Kerr County were the three counties that were really contributing the most in terms of crashes. So we wanted to take a deeper look at that and see what we can do. And then the slides that you'll see next are essentially a rough draft. They're not necessarily presentation ready. They're not something that I would add or that I'm going to add to my report. But I just want to show you how it's all a work in progress, and the tool comes in really handy when we're trying to find those countermeasures or solutions to the problems. So, for example, say Highway 16 in Madera County, by looking at the manner of collisions, the trends, always trying to identify trends. I am really big on not chasing crashes, but rather solving known problems. So while doing that, I was able to identify that those two crash clusters would be better mitigated with a divided highway through that stretch. So that right there is an actionable item. Moving on to the next county, Atascosa County. The cluster on the north side of it is already a program project through the HSIP. We're doing R-cuts. It's already in PS&E, so it's already under development. And then the bottom, I identified another cluster. Francis is another TxDOT employee. Like I said, this is really rough. I just wanted to emphasize how this really helps with that collaboration. So she's local. She received some of the complaints. We looked at the crashes, and the majority of them reflected a speeding problem. And then lastly, in Kerr County, we were able to identify other clusters, some no pattern, they were pretty in town, random. And then on the other ones, we were able to identify that the roadway was in good conditions, but we were recommending LED chevrons to guide the drivers through the curve. So thank you so much. As Rick mentioned, we'll have questions at the very end.
Awesome. Thank you, Orlando. Phenomenal presentation. I love something to kind of mention. Orlando was one of the first district engineers in Texas to start using AASHTOWare Safety. By the time their district safety plans were due, we had like implemented AASHTOWare Safety just right before then. So in a very compressed, limited amount of time, Orlando and his team were able to hop in there and put together, like identify a lot of different crash patterns, put together kind of an analysis and use that information to inform their district safety plan. So awesome call outs. It's exciting to see the stuff that you're working on for the future. I loved specifically Orlando when you were calling out like putting that municipal, like the MPO boundary overlay and looking at different ways to kind of target different audiences and different, pools of money and different resources. A great way to really dig into that data and make informed decisions and targeted solutions to improve safety. So super, super good presentation. Thanks, Orlando. Love it. All right. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Peter and Monique, and they are going to walk us through what they did in Austin. Just one last plug for questions. Start dropping them in the Q&A as they're coming up. We haven't seen any come through yet, which is perfectly fine. But as you have questions coming up, make sure you're dropping those in the Q&A, and we'll answer them at the end. So, Peter, Monique, take it away.
Thanks, Greg. So Pete and I are the traffic safety specialists for the Austin district. And kind of a little background on what that is we are part of the behavioral traffic safety section. So a lot of what we do is targeting driver behaviors and the education part of it. So our engineers do a really great job of making the road safe, and we go out there and we educate the public and put out those traffic safety campaigns to really get them to have the good behaviors to keep them safe as well. So the way we use AASHTOWare is we have another database that we call TxStorm that gives us trends. Along with those different safety campaigns we have a young driver campaign that we focus on, which is our teen click it or ticket. And when we look at this, we're looking at the different trends in the different counties. The Austin district covers 11 counties, and our counties are pretty big. So we want to make sure that we are pinpointing exactly where we're looking at. So when we noticed we had Leander, here's the city of Leander here on AASHTOWare to try to see and target exactly where those crashes were happening. What we really love about AASHTOWare is, again, using it with the district safety plan, we're really responsible for making sure that we are targeting where those crashes are happening for each particular emphasis area. So here we're able to put the city of Leander and then the ages 20 and younger, which is who we're trying to target for our fatal and serious injuries. So looking at that, plus looking at TxStorm to see the city of Leander in Williamson County, we also did some more deep diving and noticed that we saw other cities within a certain school district. So we went ahead and noticed that all of that was into Leander ISD. So at the time that we were putting this together, and this is kind of what we were looking at, was trying to figure and pinpoint where the crashes were within this kind of map and trying to basically figure it out there. But now actually they added a new filter to it, and they did add the school district, so which makes it a lot easier for us to go ahead and read, and we're able to single out that school district and pinpoint exactly where our crashes are happening and where those emphasis areas are the ones that are contributing to it. So once we've pinpointed that we wanted to go ahead and partner with Leander ISD, we decided that we were going to get together and try to put some of our resources out there, which are traffic safety grant opportunities. We have our outreach that we do and our statewide campaigns. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Pete because he was really instrumental in getting our program off the ground.
Okay, this next idea we just came up with one day in the meeting, and we were just throwing ideas at the wall to see what stuck. And being that it's in Texas and there's a phenomenon called Texas high school football, we went ahead and, next slide, we went ahead and contacted Leander ISD to maybe see if we can get the campaign ads on a Jumbotron. So we contacted Leander ISD. They were on board with it when we showed them the statistics. We had to get the videos adjusted, so we contacted our program managers. We love them. They're very supportive. Um, Sent the videos to the school district. It went to the stadiums, and it was able to be shown several times during the game at all three other stadiums. So um, we thought that was a great idea. Very different way of doing it.
Right. And because Texas football is so big here, then we're getting the home teams, plus we're getting the away teams and traveling teams that are coming out to the stadiums as well.
A lot of little eyeballs on those screens. And since then, we've done a lot of work with Leander ISD as far as coalitions. As number two, there's Jumbotrons. Number three, traffic safety information. We've contacted principals about getting messages put in the principal newsletters, um, working with them to get PSAs in the hallways and the TVs in the hallways. And last up earlier this month, we had what's called the statewide Teen Click It or Ticket campaign. It was kicking off at Glenn High School, and we had an event out there at Glenn High School, and I'll show them the video. This is a video from it.
Buckle up before every ride.
Click it or ticket.
So using the data from AASHTOWare allowed us to really target Leander ISD so far this current school year. And we look forward to using him, addressing more with Leander ISD soon. Now, going back to TxStorm, and this is one of the things that AASHTOWare really helps us with, is what's circled up top right there in the young drivers is called outside city limits. This is on TxStorm. And if you look at that, if you look on other places on that picture, there's a lot of quote outside city limits. So we were able to use AASHTOWare to determine where things were at, where crashes were happening that were outside city limits. Now there's a setting you can put on AASHTOWare that'll show you the outside city limits specifically. However, at the time, this is back in the fall. At the time, we didn't have that option. So we were able to zoom in and we were able to look at areas that were outside city limits to determine where we want to focus. Now, this is one example of an area down by east side of Austin, and we drew a little pentagram around it. We wanted to look at those spots specifically, and AASHTOWare was able to pull up the data to show us this emphasis areas, whether it be occupant protection, intersection, et cetera, for young drivers. It was able to sort by young drivers in the Pentagon, certain areas of town. We could really do some deep diving in the data. And since then also we're able to pull up Del Valley ISD. So this is a picture of Del Valley ISD in the yellow, the county line on the outside, that's Travis County. And all the crashes down there are in Del Valley ISD. So we were able to sort by Del Valley ISD to show us young drivers crash trends within the school district lines. And this is a big help for us.
Right. And then again, actually, we're targeting that district to be able to show us what the emphasis areas that we're looking at. So where speed and maybe occupant protection was happening, those crashes were happening in Leander ISD, that we can see, and it sorted out that speed, occupant protection, distracted is the educational areas that we need to focus for Del Valley.
And again, that's an example of AASHTOWare showing us what happens outside city limits within a school zone for young drivers. On the left side, that's what that is. On the right side, that's TxStorm that shows us the quote outside city limits of Travis, which is great. It puts it in a big table, but we were able to really do some deep diving with AASHTOWare on the left side.
Right. And like Orlando had mentioned earlier, we have our thing called hashtag in the street Texas. Because like he said, since November 7th of the year 2000 was the last day that we did not have a death on our Texas road. So AASHTOWare is really instrumental in really making sure that we're able to hone in and see exactly where we're going and putting our educational efforts towards.
Awesome. Thank you, Pete and Monique, so much for that presentation and for hopping on and sharing it with us. I love what you guys have done. I think it's so cool to look at how the same tool can be used for engineering as well as kind of the behavioral emphasis. The kind of brainstorming and the ideas to reach out and put those click it or ticket campaigns at the football games on the jumbotrons. Like, I love it. It's such a creative, targeted solution. You identified the population, you identified the specific area where they would be. Like, such a great way to reach out and push for safety in those communities. So you guys are doing awesome work. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Again, another plug, we've had a couple questions roll in, so keep those questions coming in the Q&A, and we'll make sure that we wrap those all up at the end. But now we will go ahead and kick it over to Jim, who's going to talk to us a little bit about the kind of future and what they're hoping to look at to continue to improve safety with AASHTOWare. So Jim, take it away.
Thank you, Greg. All right. So I'm Jim Markham, the Crash Data Analysis Section Director in the Traffic Safety Division. And I'm going to kind of zoom out and look at the overall statewide picture, what we have done with statewide safety plans, how that works, and then how integrating AASHTOWare Safety has really helped us accelerate understanding and rapidly gaining that. As Greg mentioned, a couple of the districts this last year, right after we rolled out the AASHTOWare Safety install, we're able to really hit the ground running. And it was very apparent when we got those district safety plans in, which ones had kind of hit the ground running and which ones had been using the old paradigm. And so we're looking forward to this year, having everybody kind of on board and really getting after this. So, right. So district safety plans, as Orlando mentioned, we have 25 districts. So for those of you not know, we have 254 counties, and those are divided into 25 districts. It averages about 10 counties per district. They're spread all over the state, and every year those district engineers and their teams are responsible to get a district safety plan put together that they then deliver in a presentation to the Traffic Safety Division leadership, my boss, and a couple of the other admin folks within TxDOT. And so because we have this plan that comes out annually, looking at the plan of action, our commission has put out, we want to have 0 fatalities by 2050. Well, how do we do that? We have to understand what's going on. And so we have some SHSP emphasis areas we're trying to get after. There's argument as to whether there's 3 or 4. Ease of safety, I say there's 3, but the 4th they say is EMS. I say that's a part of engineering. In any case, we're trying to get after all of that, and the engineers and the staff across all of the districts need to understand what's really going on in their district. And so this helps coordinate what's going on in the district and helps them to align what they're doing, both with those plans, looking at the presentation we just saw where, hey, where are pedestrian crashes happening? Where are pedestrian projects happening? And they don't overlap. And okay, we got a problem here. I'll show a highlight of that one at the end of my presentation with pedal cyclists for another district. So how did we go about doing this? Well, they come up with a safety plan every year. We have a couple of things that we require them to do. One of them is, hey, what are your top 5, riskiest corridors? So you can see a couple of highlights here from one district did 5 individual maps down here in Houston. They did one map with the 5 corridors all overlaid because it's a lower density district. Corpus down here did the same thing, but noticed that, those kind of all overlap with each other. El Paso looked at stuff inside and outside El Paso County. And so there was various ways that this was accomplished across the districts across the state. Well, how do we get there? Well, so what we do is we took the AASHTOWare Safety crash query template and we built them a district safety plan template. What that allows them to do is everybody starts on the same page. We have the same charts that are built for our SHSP emphasis areas and for the top contributing factors. They're free to run down whatever rabbit holes they want. But the idea is this is, one of the biggest things we always say is it a TxDOT reportable crash? Because we will accept crash reports that are not, it's in a school parking lot that's not technically reportable. It involves a ship. It's not technically a traffic safety crash. And so we filter that right up front, and then we look at crash injury severities of A and K, so K and A crashes for a 3-year period. We pre-filter that, we set that up, we get this across the state, and then we set them loose. And so they go and do that analysis in their area, and so they'll filter for their district. And one of the things that we'll notice is as you filter for a district, you may or may not be able to read this here, but down in Laredo District along the border, for K&A crashes for the same 3 years, in this top contributing factors, right up here at 5th on the list, if you exclude the other, fleeing or evading police jumps into the top 5, right? There's no other district in the state where that hits the top 5 for crashes, but given that it's a border district primarily, that is a known issue there, and so they're coordinating with Border Patrol. One of the geofilters that we've added is all of the Border Patrol checkpoints and stations along the border are available for our districts to filter on and look at and see what's going on. So well, I've got some questions in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and jump on these, Greg. So how current is the crash data? We're currently prepping to use the API. We have crash data currently loaded up through the end of December of last year, and I personally have to go and do the data pull to get that. I've got to get that pulled once a month or so, and so we're about a month out with the data. We're getting ready to push that to the API for Texas, because in 2019 we went to fully electronic reporting. This is something that I've mentioned at multiple conferences for states across the country. If you're not doing fully electronic, get there. Like, don't improve your form, don't do anything else. Get to electronic reporting so that you can get all your stuff in, because in this system we currently have, we're about a month and a half lag. What we're going to end up with when we do the live API push is every night when we send stuff to our internal data warehouse, where our official reports come from for internal stuff, we'll also push this out to the AASHTOWare Safety platform, and that will be available live. And so you'll have, on average, if we look at our numbers from crash to report available in the system in Texas, that averages about 8.4 days. We do have a little bit more lag in terms of correcting the reports. It's a 30 to 45 day lag to make sure that we've got DUI numbers added. The crash will be reported, but we won't have a DUI report back yet. For DUI alcohol, DUI drugs is about an 18-month lag. We'll know the crash happened. We'll know that the officer says they think they were high and that there was a test sent off, but to get the official report back, that's 18 months. But we know that crash happened and it will be available in the system. So we'll be able to see that. So for us, because we're doing 100% electronic reporting, that gives us a huge advantage to be able to get after exactly what happened last year. So moving forward, again, zooming in on that border district, you can see where the fleeing or evading police jumps into the top 10. Or top 5 rather. That's a pretty big deal. This is the 35 corridor that runs up here through San Antonio and on up to Canada. And so that being a major corridor is an issue. We did have a question from one of the Border Patrol checkpoints and the district engineer, because there was some ranches along the Border Patrol area. They had 2 directional traffic on their access roads and people were bypassing the checkpoint. So they're working with the local law enforcement, with Border Patrol, and with the TxDOT engineers to figure out how to better structure that interchange to make sure that people can't bypass that and run. Moving on, we were also able to look at some other things. So we can do a deep dive, looking at the Houston district. They had, and you'll see this here, pedal cyclist is kind of always on the far end. It's the lowest number, but what you can't see is if you switch back and forth between the statewide look and this look, it moves up a decent chunk. And compared to the statewide numbers, they have a 35% increase above the state average. it goes from like 2% to 3% in that ball, 2 point something to 3 point something. But because of that big gap, it's a 35% increase over the state average for pedal cyclist crashes. So they looked at that and said, how can we do that? So they run their safety plan. At the same time, we can do a deep dive for them using the software. So we developed a little technique to take screenshots directly out of the software, lay them over in Photoshop, and use some technique to stack maximum value. And basically what you get is, this is where the crashes happened over a course of 5 years. If you lay each one of those crash maps over top of each other and average them with the stack maximum, everywhere that's not blue in any one of those will render not blue. So what you end up with at the end is where crashes happened every year for 5 years. And then we talk to them about, okay, what's that look like every year? Let's talk to the district about the safety plan and what they're doing on their bike facilities. And so where are they doing those projects? And then we talk to the public information officers and those TSSs, like Monique and Peter, to get the education efforts out there. What does that look like? Well, when we overlay that map to downtown Houston, every year for 5 years in this area, there have been pedal cyclist crashes. Every year for 5 years up here, the pedal cyclist crashes. And you'll see there's a blank spot in these areas where there aren't any facilities that were planned. So that's something that we were able to highlight by using the data that we have, the things that we have available to us. And so looking at that statewide picture, grabbing the big statewide picture, necking it down to each district can look at it, they can filter, they can see the same averages across the state to where they are, and then they can very quickly say, hey, we're above the state average on this. As an example, Odessa district, Midland Odessa has a large oil field area out there. They notice annually that they are higher than average for commercial motor vehicle crashes. When they adjust for the percentage of commercial motor vehicle traffic that they have based on the oil field traffic, they're actually doing okay. But because they were concentrating on that, they were able to engage with some of those companies, and they have reduced the number of crashes overall because of that appropriate and targeted education effort. So trying to hit the 3 E's, education, enforcement, and engineering. We're kind of covering everything. And so I think that should be my last slide. We'll open it up for questions. Greg, I know we've got some in the chat.
Yeah. So we did have a couple questions around data, Jim. It looks like Eddie wanted to know how often the data is updated. And then we had a question from Vanessa as well around crash location accuracy. So I don't know if you want to kind of tackle both of those at once.
Okay. I'll run through. So how often is the data updated? Like I said, we have 100% electronic reporting. So we get crashes in all the time. We update crashes all the time. So anytime an officer files a supplement, that'll go into the system. It'll get resent to our data warehouse. And once we get the API up and running, we'll be sending that to AASHTOWare. Currently, it's about once a month, depending on whether or not this guy gets his job done and gets the data to the Numetric folks. But we're turning about a 30 to 45 day lag currently. But those crashes are basically all of the crashes that have happened in that time frame. Looking at crash accuracy and concerns on inaccurate locations. So when crashes come in our system, we have a way that will automatically locate the crashes on our roadway network. And the system, if it can't automatically locate the crash, will kick that over to our unlocated queue. And then I have a human look at that. And the biggest problem that we generally run into is where, loop 1, 2, 3 and highway 6, right? Well, which end of the loop is it on? That's like the vast majority of those crashes that it's a north-south entrance to the loop on both ends, and somehow like we got to figure out which end of that loop it's on from contextual cues, et cetera. But for the most part, we're able to locate those very accurately, and then they get kicked into the system. We do have some. If you pull up AASHTOWare Safety, you'll see that X of Y crashes. There's a difference because the non-located crashes are not being displayed because they don't have a good location on them. A good chunk of those will be pulled out if they're because they're the non-reportable. So if you filter on TxDOT reportable, that moves a chunk of those out. The stack maximum thing, that's something that I developed personally. Actually, it's a technique from astrophotography, and I've actually talked to the Numetric team, and they're working on that. It's not available yet, but that's something that I understand that the team is like, that's cool. We're going to try that. Not for prime time yet. If you want to be able to do that, and your organization has a Photoshop license, I can absolutely run through how to do that, and you're welcome to email me, and I can run you through exactly how that works, to be able to do that every year for a given period versus over the entire period. That's something. It's a very simple technique, and it's facilitated by the fact that I can click through the years on the map with AASHTOWare, export exactly the same picture, so the map doesn't move, just the blue kind of shifts around. And when you see how that works, it becomes really simple to understand what it's doing. And then using the technique allows you to then pinpoint, hey, where is this a perennial problem? And back at the other questions, overlay to all of our school districts. Yeah, as far as we got that question in from one of our program managers, and because the Numetric suite works with shapefiles natively, and Texas Education Authority, TEA, had a shapefile list on their website with all of the school districts in it. We sent that link over, and it was literally, I got the question, and in like 58 minutes from I got the question, it was available in the system, because it just happened to be that it didn't need any processing to convert a shapefile. It was right in the right format, and it loaded into the system. And so now we have every school district, every independent school district, ISD in the state. That's one of the overlays you can turn on, and it's one of the geo filters that we have available for us.
Yeah, and that was actually kind of a cool story regarding the school districts. When Pete and Monique were originally presenting last year, they kind of mentioned, as they were looking at those cities, and they saw those cities kind of popping up on the top of the list. I believe, Pete, Monique, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe both of you had kind of a background in education and had taught before, and you kind of noticed those cities and kind of had that like, hey, wait a minute, I know where that's at. You kind of had that light bulb moment. And then afterward is when we actually put in that district overlay to kind of help out. Am I summarizing that correct, Monique?
Yes, yes. So I taught in Round ISD and Leander ISD, and Pete has taught in Pflugerville ISD. So it's really helpful for us knowing what cities are laying in those districts. And then, so we were able to do it that way. But then when we made the presentation and Jim was like, hey, you can do that now, we're like, sweet, that's awesome, because it's really, really helpful. Um, and then another, I guess part of that question from have we incorporated messages at other sporting events? So when we did partner up with Leander ISD, our main goal was football games. But they have agreed, and because we brought the data from AASHTOWare and everything and showing them about their crashes, that they've decided that they're playing them they were hosting Battle of the Band. So whenever they have things going on there at their stadiums, they are playing it. And then other sporting events are statewide, program managers and our driver education behavior, which are our campaign managers. They also are looking at the data and taking it across Texas. So when we do our statewide impaired driving campaign, Drive Silver, No Regrets, and it's football season that we're targeting, when we go out to the different universities, like very specifically here in Austin at UT, we have our messages playing out there, and we have those. They've also done them at the Dell Diamond, which is a minor league team that feeds into the Texas Rangers. So our statewide branch, who does all that statewide campaigns, they do use the data, and they're able to put those messages out there at other sporting events as well.
That's awesome. And I know right now you're kind of working with, I believe, just that one school district, and you're kind of trying to get to traction moving with more school districts. And I'm trying to remember back a couple months. So
Yes, so we are, and we have other, like we said, other traffic safety grants. We're doing something called our driver's education grant, which is trying to get driver's ed back in there. So Pete's been really instrumental in trying to reaching out to those schools. We go out there, we have the meetings, we're showing the data, showing the crashes that are happening. And a lot of the schools are actually, really invested because, they want to be there for their students and make sure that they're putting the safety for them and getting that education out there. So we are working with Lake Travis ISD. I'm trying to put some stuff out there, Fleurville, but And we have Project Celebration, we have Hayes County out there. So we're doing a lot of work with the different surrounding school districts because we're able to put that information out there and show the crashes. And then that kind of leads us into, hey, this is the resources that we have that can help.
Yeah.
Looking at the last question we've got in there is the overrepresentation model. So TxStorm is actually was developed. It's a statistical model that was developed by one of our program managers who has been over our law enforcement selective traffic enforcement program, those STEP grants for about 10 years. And he has done a rock star job of that. He built that model. And so because that was developed with state funds, I know it's another section director, but I can speak for them to say we are open to being able to let you in on how that thing runs. And if you want the guts, it's an Excel model that looks at, and they've got it built out onto the web now. But the basic idea is my staff do a data extract monthly. They feed that over into the model, and then it figures out where areas are overrepresented or underrepresented with regards to different crash types and criteria. And so it's a web-based model that we built on the guts of an Excel model that does that. And so it's not in AASHTOWare, but what it allowed us to do is, like they said, look at where are those kind of criteria, where are the contributing factors, things like outside city limits as a crash factor. And then you can do that filtering in AASHTOWare Safety to see where that's happening and get the visual representation of what you see in the table. If you've got questions about that, please reach out when we can link up and give you the background and the guts on that model. Yeah, we can definitely talk through that, and I'll talk to the other section director and that program manager. And I know we're open to that. Any of the TxDOT tools, high risk, whether or not crashes are reported yet, curve locations of certain intersections, design that may need low-cost preemptive solutions. So that's one of the things that the AASHTOWare safety tool set it can do with the if you look at predictive stuff in the network screening suite of applications. What we can do there is, as Greg likes to say, and I'll keep plugging this because it's awesome. The best measure for what you're doing is all the measures. And so when you look at the network screening, specifically the segments piece or sliding window analysis, you can take and look at some of the predicted factors and figure out where there are sections of road that are missing any sort of the treatments that would be standard now. So as an example, one of the standards is roadside rumble strips. That is anytime you do a project, if you are adjusting the roadway such that you would be able to put in rumble strips as a part of that project, you will put in rumble strips. It's not you can, it's that you will, thou shalt, right? And that's part of our standards across the state now. And so what this has allowed us to, you can find some of those predicted places where there's some low-hanging fruit. I know some of the districts are looking into that with the network screening tools to be able to do that for the preemptive stuff. We have another team in our design division that is looking at a bunch of intersections and examining them to see if it's possible to do alternate design. Roundabouts. We have a roundabout queen, and she beats that drum all the time, and we love her because those are the best things. My wife hates them, but she can hate them all she wants and still be safer. So, anything else questions wise? Greg, I'll kick it back to you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jim. It looks like we do have a couple people who are interested in taking you up on the offer of taking a look at that Excel model. So, Jim, I don't know if you want to just kind of plug your email address or whatnot.
Yep, I'll stop sharing and then throw that in the chat.
Yeah, so the chat's only going to go to us. Just open that slide up, put your email address in the slide, and then you can share that out again. And then anyone who wants to, you can reach out to Jim for that. Thanks for asking your question, Nate, by the way. Good to see you again. Hope things are well. I did want to, on that vein, actually, if you have questions, keep them coming. I'm not trying to wrap up, but I did want to plug our next webinar. So as we look at our Q2 webinar coming up in a couple months, we are actually going to be taking a look at alternative design. Oh, there we go. Jim, thanks for throwing your email address up there. So If you did have any questions, wanted to look at any of those models, anything like that, whether it's the Photoshop or the other kind of Excel model that Jim was talking about, you can reach out to Jim directly there, and he'd be happy to help you out. Our webinar, looking at our time, we got a couple minutes. So again, any questions, keep them coming. But looking at our Q2 webinar, the next one we're going to have is we're looking at alternative design, specifically supporting HSM Part C. So that's actually going to touch a little bit on the question that Drew asked at the end there around identifying and looking at improvements for areas where crashes haven't necessarily occurred yet. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that, keep your eyes peeled for the invitation for that webinar coming up. Huge thank you again to all of our presenters, Orlando, Monique, Peter, Jim. Y'all did such a good job. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and share with us the best practices that you all are pushing out into Texas. You're doing amazing things. You've got a big job ahead of you, and you guys are doing great. So thanks for taking the time to meet with us.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having us on.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. And thanks to everyone for sitting into the webinar and taking the time out of your day to come and learn a little bit more as well. We will be sharing a recording of this webinar out with everyone, as Ryan mentioned at the top. So keep your eyes peeled for that email coming soon. If you have any questions that you'd like us to address after the fact, maybe you're watching this recorded, maybe you're like me and you don't think of a question until 10 seconds after the meeting ends, you can always shoot us an email as well, and we'd be happy to help you out. You can reach us at support@newmetric.com, and we'd be happy to answer any of those questions in the future. So thank you, everyone. Stay safe.